Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebayo and Tim Vickery.
And welcome to the Global Soccer Interactive, which is part of the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. The Legendino Tim Vickery, as always, is in Rio, and he's asked me to tell you to please subscribe, please like, please join us on the WhatsApp group. Please, please, please tell everybody you know about it so that we can carry on doing this wonderful, entertaining podcast stroke program. Because we've got with us today one of their own, as in he'll never walk alone, Evans, Liverpool through and through and through and through, as well as being a football writer and otherwise. Tony, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever people are listening to us from.
How's things, chaps?
Very well.
Very good. Very good. And I think the starting point here, 2-3 weeks ago, a certain Adebayo,
yes, I know. Unrelated.
he said, well, you might as well give the title to Liverpool now.
Well, there was a lot of that going on, wasn't there? You know, it's and I kept repeating the mantra: you don't win anything in September, you don't win anything in October, and you know, of course, don't Arsenal get it? You know, in the next month or so, don't they get it in November? We all run away with it, but there's a long, long way to go. And even when Liverpool were winning and were getting all those late goals, you could still see the flaws in the team. You could see that there was going to be, if not a crisis, a blip. And it's been on the crisis end of the scale, hasn't it? Really.
Let me just remind all of our viewers and listeners that you can join in this conversation. You know, that's why it's called the Global Soccer Initiative. Interactive, apologies, initiative is something else completely. Global Soccer Interactive. It's a mouthful, but hey, we got there in the end, and we would love you to join us as well. If you want to talk Liverpool, and you know they are the champions after all, and what may be a blip, or what may be a autumn fever, I don't know how you would describe it, Tony, whatever it might be. Let's talk about that, because they've done yet, and they had a relatively good time in the Champions League this week, amongst other things. But if you want to join in, there's lots of questions we're going to ask. I want to talk about some of the key players, Ekitike in particular, because I just think he's dazzling. I think he showed that when he gets a game, when he's not having to fight with Alexander Isak for the position of chief striker, if not so forward. I think he's the best thing that Liverpool have got on the pitch, in my humble opinion. But hey, we'll hear all about that. Give us your thoughts. Just join in the studio chat, on your screens completely, and we'll make sure you get in touch and bring you on as well. You can talk to us directly. So, Tony, you clearly are not concerned at the moment that Liverpool suffered what some people would describe as something of a humiliating defeat for the weekend.
Well, I am concerned. I mean, when you get beat by Manchester United, and particularly this Manchester United, it's always going to hurt. You know, when Alex Ferguson's teams beat you, you could at least go away and go, well, you know, they're probably in the top 2 or 3 teams in the world. But this lot, you know, they've still got the look of a side that'll finish in the bottom half to me. So yeah, it's painful. But what's been it's been really difficult watching them, because you can see that the change over the summer, bringing in so many players, has had a detrimental effect. I mean, we're watching Isak do his pre-season in the Premier League and the Champions League, and that's not ideal, is it? You know, you mentioned Ekitike, who has been brilliant, and yet, you know, sort of Slot hasn't started them as regularly as perhaps many of us might have. I think Slot's groping for a system, for a pattern of play that will get the best out of all these players. But I think at some point he's probably got to realise that you're not going to get the best out of everyone. Some people are going to have to subvert their natural game for the good of the team, and I think there'll be a little bit more pain before we actually get there.
It was a strange window, wasn't it, Tony? I mean, last year, Slot won with Jurgen Klopp's team. and this maybe is like the first full slot season. But it was a strange window. What did you make of it?
Well, I can understand why they did it, because they'd spent very little the previous summer. They had a big pot of money they could spend under the financial rules. They looked at Man City and thought they're going through a transition period. If we buy the best players that are available to us and we restock the team, we can be looking to dominate for the next 5 years. Of course, getting over the hump, getting those players into a pattern of play is easier said than done. And I mean, it was a bit Football Manager, wasn't it? Let's go out and buy like top class players, and we'll see where they go. Traditionally, the Liverpool way was to upgrade gradually, buy from a position of strength, but don't do a massive overhaul. Having said that, 1987, Barnes, Beardsley, that was so. But yeah, probably you're best sticking to the idea: if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they fixed many unbroken things this summer.
But they didn't fix the part that seemed most likely to break, which was the defensive unit. Now, this is the thing. I know that the Mark Gahey thing fell right at the final hurdle. But see, I would have thought that was the position where you'd have wanted to do your business first. So you've got an entire pre-season with a top-class centre-back. And instead, a lot of shiny toys came in. And the whole thing ended up being dominated by Isak. And you wondered at the end of the window, did they really still need him? So did you agree with these? Did you think the priorities were wrong?
Well, I certainly thought a centre-half was a desperate need. But I mean, I think perhaps sometimes we think in football in an old-fashioned way, especially those of us who are getting on and being round the block.
Oh, yeah, great hair, mate.
Football, and someone said to me about 12 years ago, someone inside Liverpool, he said, stop thinking about it as a football club, think about it as content creation. And it was a content creation.
I don't want to think about it.
I don't either.
But you don't own the club. You don't own the club.
No, I don't.
He who pays the piper calls the tune, surely.
I'll say.
But although the fans are the ones who pay the piper, ultimately. Yeah. Sorry, apologies. Go ahead, Lee.
Oh, TV. But in all seriousness, I think, they should have really solidified that back line, because when you've got, I've never really fancied Konate personally. So you've got Virgil van Dijk in his getting on for his mid-30s. Obviously, a titanic player. That's a bad phrase, isn't it? A titan of a player, and then suddenly, effectively, you're replacing the two full backs. There's going to be a massive incoherence there, and when you're having to, you've bought a player like Wirtz. You have to build the team around him, but that's going to leave you a little short-handed in terms of the midfield from last year. So the problems just multiply as as time goes on. There were good signs in Frankfurt, but they weren't a great team, Eintracht Frankfurt. Brentford will be a huge test, and who would have thought you'd be saying that at the beginning of the season? Brentford are going to be a huge test
for Liverpool, of all things, as well. I agree. I think it was there for everybody to see from the very first match of the season that your centre backs, Konate was making a schoolboy errors. It was kind of shocking, actually. But I'll give him his dues. I don't even know fancied him like you said, but he is a player. He wouldn't have got to Liverpool if he didn't have some considerable talent and determination. And as you've identified, Virgil van Dijk, he's just, they say he's pace off the ball. He's a couple of paces off the ball. And if he, as you like to press so high, if he's caught in the wrong half of the pitch, he ain't gonna, I can't see many wingers or strikers who are going to not get past him. And there you got a huge problem. However, I always thought one of the other places you had a problem was with Talis and Mo Salah, who's also lost a pace. Also. And I thought Wirtz was coming in to, in a way, support Salah. Andy Brassel, a good friend of ours, put it very succinctly when I was talking to him about this earlier today, that Wirtz was supposed to allow Salah to age gracefully, if you know what I mean. Because Salah's still a great goal scorer. You know, you get the ball anywhere near his left foot, within striking distance of the goal, and he's going to have a crack at it, and more likely, or often enough, he'll score. It doesn't seem as if you're even preparing for what is clearly coming about now, because he's not getting everything as he probably would like, which is you're going to lose that bloke there. How are you going to replace him? How are you going to replace him? I'd have thought Wirtz or even Ekitike might have been the ideal people to kind of support him, but Wirtz hasn't really hit the running, but Ekitike is not getting the game time, like you say, because he's having to compete with Alexander Isak for a striking position, which doesn't make sense.
Salah's a really interesting case. He's a man with a great sense of his own status, and I don't mean that. You know, that sounds like a negative. I don't. He works really hard on his fitness. He applies himself to the game. You know, he won't do nonsense interviews all the time. He's aware that he is he's a global superstar, and of course, he signs the big deal to stay after the contract ran down. But suddenly, over the summer, he doesn't find himself playing second fiddle. You know, he's way down the pecking order because, you know, of Wirtz and Isak. And I think in many ways, and no one has said this to me explicitly, you know, just hints about it. But I think when they're going to sign the new deal, the new two-year deal, the intention may well be to move him on next summer. The analytics guys, right across the league, not just Liverpool, have this idea that players in the 30s, when they actually begin to drop off, they don't go downhill gradually. They fall off a cliff. And maybe people will be thinking that opinion of Salah is vindicated. I think it's too harsh. I think he's going to have a big role to play this season. But I think once they signed Ekitike and they knew Isak was on his way, and you know, and bought two strikers, two effective centre forwards, I think it told you that Salah was going to have to take a little bit more of a backseat, and I don't think he's taken that well. I don't think I know he hasn't taken the death of Diogo Jota well. You know, it's really affected him, and part of me thinks, you know, we need to stop talking about this because it looks like you're presenting an excuse. And the other side of me thinks we need to talk more about this because the players are human. You know, they have feelings. They're not robots. Like sometimes I think some of the coverage and some of the attitudes of fans is. So Salah's I thought it was really interesting before the Manchester United game when they were all lined up in the tunnel. You're standing there, you're playing Man United, and he sort of squatted down. And the look on his face, it wasn't the look of a man. You know, if I'm playing Man United, I'm got a liver bears on my chest. I'm in that tunnel. I'm like standing up, chest out. I'm snarling at every mank I can see. You know what I mean? But like, you know, and Salah, who owns Manchester United, looked. He didn't look to me like he was up for it, and that was like, oh, I'm. You know what? I admire Salah as much as anyone. I love Salah, and I think he's going to come good, and I hope he's here for the next 2 years. But at the moment, his confidence is low, his mood's low, and hopefully he'll get it back and he'll prove all the doubters wrong.
What do you think would be the most coherent team that Slot can form from the resources that he's got?
I think obviously you've got to build around Wirtz. So you know it's if we go from the back, I think the keeper is obvious. Mamardashvili's not Alisson, but he should be good enough. I think right back Conor Bradley, it's going to be obviously the two centre halves speak for themselves, but I think we need to see Andy Robertson get an extended run in the team. The midfield is difficult. I think sort of everyone was talking last night about being a 4. It wasn't really a 4. It was sort of 4-4-2. Hang on. Isn't that for the dinosaurs? But it's
Back. Yeah.
I think if you're going to play Wirtz and you're going to build the team around him, you have to fill that midfield. You got to get 3 in there. I thought Curtis Jones gave a great deal of energy. Szoboszlai has been fantastic, and
Good.
and then you're talking Gravenberch, because at the moment, McAllister, who was magnificent until they actually got their hands on the title last year, looks like a man who needs a rest. Then that means you've got 2 up front, and Isak's going to play again. When you pay that much money for him, you've got to put him in the team, and so then you're between Ekitike and Salah, and at the moment, I think Ekitike will get the nod. Of course, Isak's groin in injury in Frankfurt means that probably we'll see Salah this weekend. But I think unless Salah has a huge return to form, he'll be spending more time on the bench than he would like.
Isn't that going in just of Alexander Isak's, which seems to have been a developing problem? He looked woeful for Sweden, who were struggling to get into the World Cup, let alone for Liverpool. Isn't that a groin injury of your own making, in that you knew he didn't have a pre-season? Players have got to have these pre-seasons. It's their physical requirements, to be able to last the punishing schedules that they have. And it feels like Liverpool, in my view, for a player that they chase and paid that amount of money for, they haven't been handling him with care. I mean, he himself, you could argue, and I think there is an argument to say, did himself no favours in the way he exited Newcastle with a strike. He's missed some game time. His mind wasn't on it. He goes to Liverpool sort of half-cocked in that respect. Plus, also, he hasn't had flipping pre-season. What did you expect of him?
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. And, he's been thrown in at the deep end, really, when he's not ready for it. I don't think there's a single football fan outside the Liverpool fan base, sort of Premier League football fan, who wants to see Isak do well after the way he left Newcastle. Because, let's face it, everyone loves it when a player does it for their team. But, they hate it when, the lack of loyalty. But, he has to do what's best for his career. And, and the same goes for Trent Alexander-Arnold when he left. But he's put himself in a position where he's not ready to play at the level that's expected. And because of the price tag, Liverpool need to get him up to that level as quickly as possible, which means playing in games which perhaps he would have been better staying in training at Kirby. And but what it's like, when you've got these price tags, you better get on that pitch and you better perform, because the hysterical fan bases that we see, particularly online, less in the grounds, but particularly online, start calling for blood. There have been people all week saying that Slot should be sacked. I mean, how much time, how much goodwill does winning a title get you? I mean, it's 6-8 weeks? Mad.
Yeah, you've got to filter out all of that, haven't you? But what's the mood inside the stadium?
I think the mood inside the stadium is like, we need this to be better. But I think overwhelmingly, it's belief that it will come good and that this squad will be able to to be there and thereabouts in both the title race and the Champions League come next spring, and that the team is well set for as I say, the next half decade. So I think there is among the match-going fans a positivity. It might be cautious at the moment, but a couple of wins and they'll be back on they'll be excited again. So I think got beat by United a couple of years ago, beat them 7-0, and the season still fizzled out. You just got to. Part of me thinks that the way Liverpool are at the moment, you've got to try and get off the roller coaster of results and say what they've got is the tools to actually dominate this division, and they just need to be used in the right way. And of course, hopefully the mood in the dressing room, the dynamic in the dressing room, won't be changed too much by the arrival of the new players and obviously events this year. But someone like Salah, if he gets his mind right, he'll start banging the goals in again.
Does this put a lot of pressure on the Champions League campaign? Let's imagine a scenario where Liverpool are just off the pace in the title race come February. Does that put a lot of pressure on the Champions League campaign?
Oh, yeah, because they weren't shy about their ambitions, at the end of last season. We were disappointed. We got knocked out by PSG, but next year we want to win that and we want to retain the title. And it's like, okay, I might have kept it a bit more low-key myself. It's like, this is what we want to do. And they bought as if their intent is real, and it is real. Now they might be reassessing it, but, you look at PSG last year, I mean, in the autumn, I mean, they were awful. You wouldn't have thought they were going to be the best team in Europe and the best team in the world, despite Chelsea winning the Trump Cup. It's you would have looked at them and said, no chance.
That is unkind. Cole Palmer did try to kick Trump off that picture, remember? So
he
come
did.
on now.
He did.
He did try.
He did. But I did see that picture circulating on social media of the Chelsea fan with Trump and Palmer on the scarf. It's you're like, well, fair play to the entrepreneurial spirit of whoever got that scarf together. But but suffice to say, this time last year, you would have written off PSG, and so there's a long, long way to go. And if Wirtz can deal with the physicality of the Premier League, I thought it was very interesting that he was so much better against Eintracht Frankfurt. He got more room. He wasn't closed down quickly enough. And the one thing Bundesliga players have to deal with is how much quicker the Premier League is and how much more physical it is. And Wirtz has struggled with that a little bit. So, but if he can come to terms with that, he's got the range of passing and the vision to propel Liverpool forwards sooner rather than later.
See, this is why Ekitike you're so lucky to have that player come over, because he's got the gravitas. I think he imposes himself on the pitch, his stature of somebody who can handle the physicality of the Premier League. He's got the speed and the goals, mate. I mean, honestly, every time I watch Liverpool now, I'm excited because this player adds something special to the mix. But anyway, you can pontificate on that if you like. But
no, I agree completely. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah. One thing that I'm not sure about is whether Liverpool are they're effective in set pieces this season. It seems that something's not quite clicking. Before you get a set piece, free kick, 20 yards out of the box or something, and you could almost guarantee that there'd be a goal somehow. But you've been fluffing around, particularly corners and stuff. Have you noticed that? Or is this something I'm imagining?
No, they've been terrible at set pieces, and they're up against Keith Andrews, the set piece king at Brentford at the weekends. It's we live in fear. It doesn't help that they bought two really short fullbacks. The number of times they're getting hurt at the back post. It's and there's been some individual errors, of course. People are not picking up the markers, but. For three Man United players to be queuing up on that second phase,
it was bad.
I mean, it's like, the highest level I ever played football at was in the Kirby League, and I'm screaming, someone pick him up! Someone, it's like, it's like, and things like that. It seems like amateur hour, and Slot, who is, is too good a coach to even, sort of use the phrase amateur hour in a sentence that includes him, even though it just is, needs to get that right, and he will do. But yeah, it's I think on defensive situations, it's a combination of unfamiliarity with the people, across the back line, and also I think there's a level of mistrust at the moment, which we're seeing for the first time. And when you think for what the best part of half a decade, maybe even a bit longer, the fullbacks were the creative fulcrum of Klopp's team, and they were so regular. And I mean, he whose name we cannot speak, Trent, he's been missed badly. For all people talked about his defensive flaws, you're thinking to yourself, well, we'll take them now. But like, they've got to get sharper there, and people have got to be aware of their roles and make sure they carry them out, because on some of those set pieces there's been absolute chaos.
Just the Slot team that won the title last year, which I don't think many people saw coming. Who wants to be the guy after the guy? Where does that rank in your purely subjective consideration of all the great Liverpool sides that you've seen over the years? Where does that one rank?
Oh, pretty highly, because, as you say, no one saw it coming. No one inside the club. The players didn't. And Slot didn't. And it was just one of those remarkable things that happened. So, I mean, everyone's gone into it thinking, oh, you know what, top four, that'll be all right. And next thing, they're romping to the title. And it was a very joyous experience. So I put it pretty highly. I mean, they weren't the best Liverpool team I've ever seen by any stretch of the imagination. But it was just a fantastic year. And, it's the early setback against Forest at home, and you thought, well, it's probably they might finish second, and then boom. So it was just a brilliant experience. But I think people, as a result of that, have perhaps got a bit over, not optimistic, probably a little bit entitled, even thinking, if he can do that in his first year with Slot's team, well, wait and see what he does with these new boys. Don't work like that.
Sometimes the worst thing for a manager is a bit of success, and it just raises the bar,
Yeah.
And everything else is going to be a disappointment. But I'm sure whatever happens, it's gonna be a riveting season, isn't it? It's going to be, because whatever happens with Liverpool now, there's stories galore. There's a season that's going to stick out in the memory, perhaps for good reasons, perhaps for bad reasons, but it's going to be a season that sticks out, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I always say to, sort of the young people who are supporting the club, say, really enjoy it. The stuff you've seen over, with Klopp. I thought, after living through the 70s and 80s, that I'll never see anything like this again. And then you see Istanbul and you think, well, that's it. That's got to be the peak of it. And then the Klopp teams did unbelievable things, and now Slot, and people are still moaning. People always moan, but and always did, to be fair, always did. But they did it in the ground, or wrote to the local newspaper, not to a global audience. But I mean, it is the two most newsworthy teams in the country, Liverpool and United. No matter how they're playing, it's always a soap opera. So when you when you're winning, just enjoy it. And Liverpool fans who are moaning now, you saw a title you didn't expect in the spring. Give the fellas a break, at least until Christmas.
Mate, it's been great speaking to you, Tony. Let's do it again.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Tony Evans, Liverpool through and through, as we could hear as well. Do remember, this is the Global Soccer Interactive. If you'd like to join in, then feel free, join in on your screen, chat with us, come online, in fact, come on screen with us, and let's have a conversation about football. Tony Evans there, before he left, he mentioned Nottingham Forest. So
yeah, should we make a tactical substitution?
Oh, definitely. I was going from one end of the Premier League table to the other end of it, and well, let's face it. Here we go. Matt Davis is with us. Nottingham Forest podcast, Focus podcast, is what you present, Matt. Good to have you with us. Appreciate that.
No, good to be with you. Good to be with you. Looking forward to chatting. Hopefully it was under better circumstances, but good to be with you anyway.
Mate, look, last season was great for you. So at the moment, it's a struggle, but let's put things in perspective. You're always going to struggle a little bit this season, weren't you? Were you not expecting that, or did you think it would be even greater than it was last season?
No. I think when we did our pre-season predictions on our podcast, we all thought if we could finish kind of 10th ambitiously, 12th to comfortable season, and then anything in Europe would be good. But obviously we massively overachieved last season, and if we could have had a steady season, that would have been great. But it's October and we're on our third manager, so it's rocky times. But we're feeling more optimistic about Sean Dyche than we were about Ange Postecoglou, I would say, certainly.
Well, let's talk about Sean Dyche. He wasn't everybody's first choice, was he? Not by a long shot. I'm talking about not the owner's first choice, not the fans' first choice. From what I understand, when he first got even mooted as a Nottingham Forest manager, people they'd forgotten what he had achieved at Burnley at the very least. I'll say that, and Everton arguably as well.
Yeah, I mean, there were three managers on the list when it came round to it: Silva, Dyche, and Mancini. And I think Silva was probably the one that fans would have liked because he's done a long, steady job at Fulham with limited resources. I think Dyche did the same, but he's got this kind of reputation of bad football, and that's probably what we're looking forward to seeing what he does at Forest. And Mancini's obviously got a fantastic CV. And reputation as a player, but everything you read about him, and you guys might know more than me about it, but he sounds like he's quite a hothead, and we've got an owner who can be that way as well, and it seemed like a marriage made in hell potentially. So I think fans have really come round to Dyche. The way he's spoken since he came in as manager, he's got a connection with the club, the coaches have got a connection with the club. He said all the right things, which Ange didn't, in terms of building a relationship with the fans. And there's actually quite a lot of optimism as we record this before Porto tonight in his first game.
But surely this is something that shouldn't even be happening, because Nuno should be there.
Yeah. I mean, Nuno wasn't sacked for football reasons, was he? He was sacked for a falling out with Edu and a broken relationship, which we still don't know the exact reasons for what went down there between them. But yeah, it was a great shame. Nuno did this. Steve Cooper laid the foundations, and Nuno took it to another level. Admittedly, we fell away at the end of last season, but we still had a brilliant season to finish 7th. That was way ahead of what we should have done. So it was pretty gutting to see how it fell apart. Even on the eve of the season, Nuno in some lively press conferences that were very un-Nuno, and then 2 good results, then a terrible result, and then he was gone and Ange was in.
I was having a discussion on Brazilian media this week, and the subject, the big topic was, is Nottingham Forest a dreadful warning to Brazilian football? And the rationale is the following. Over here in Brazil, we're only just able to have owners. This is very, very new. This is last 3 or 4 years that the club have had owners. And obviously the Glazers is a dreadful warning to anyone. But Brazilian football doesn't move the amount of money to attract someone like the Glazers with a project of extraction. But what football often does attract is the ego on the loose, because football is going to give that person a plaything and a profile. What's the relationship now of the Forest fans and the owner?
I still think it's very strong, Tim. I mean, it's taken a hit because he made a terrible decision with Ange Postecoglou, and I think it was one you could see coming. I thought, there was a chance it could work, and I'm really surprised it fell apart as fast as it did. But it felt like a pretty narrow path to it working because it was such a departure from Nuno. But with Marinakis in general, he came in when the club was at a low ebb in the low reaches of the Championship. And I think he hit lightning in a bottle with Cooper. We weren't, he'd been there for a few years before that with a few managers that didn't work. And then Cooper got us up. And then Marinakis really, I suppose in the sense you say he came into his own, and he threw a lot of money at a lot of players, which is sort of teams have tried to do since then. Sunderland this summer are probably an example, and they've done really well. And I think Forest fans built a love for him because of that. He got us up. He kept us up. They love that he takes, he sticks two fingers up to authority. Some of it's not my cup of tea, some of the things he does, but the fans do generally love that, with the way the Premier League is. So his relationship is still strong. Obviously, if this season goes catastrophically wrong, then it's not going to be strong. But right now, he's made a big mistake, and there's a feeling amongst a lot of fans that, okay, he's rectified it. It looks terrible the way we've gone about this season because we're, like I say, 3 managers before November and we're in the relegation.
Surely that's 2 mistakes.
Well, sacking Nuno.
Getting rid of Nuno and then sacking someone who clearly wasn't going to work.
I suppose the alternative was, what do you do with Edu? He spent a lot of money to bring Edu in to oversee this global project, which looks like there's some sort of Botafogo involvement to link it to Brazilian football. Yeah. And Edu... the thing Marinakis to me craves is status, glamour, which is sort of the same thing, and trophies. And Edu sort of is that glamour capture of, he's come from Arsenal, big Arsenal, to Nottingham Forest, and that the Marinakis family, or whatever you call it, to revamp them. So he'd only just got Edu in after a long pursuit. So what do you do with one of them? And I suppose in that situation, he chose Edu, and Nuno was pushed out pretty quickly, actually, once things deteriorated. But yeah, it doesn't look like the right decision right now. Whether it plays out long term and Edu can do big things for us, I don't know. But we'll wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, you're very lucky to have your captain Gibbs White. I don't know how you've managed to keep him. No, genuinely, because I could see him. He is a game changer. And clubs looking for midfielder like him, flipping out to lead the line. But also, how on earth could you not keep Anthony Elanga? Those are question marks. I think when we talk about the difference between this season and last season, the pace of Elanga is on the right is an obvious difference. It's gone. And Newcastle have got him. He's got the pace still at Newcastle, but they're not quite using him as effective, or Newcastle team isn't as effective in just passing the ball to him and allowing him to run. He's still doing wonders for the Swedish national team, of course, as well. I wonder whether those two positions, both keeping Gibbs White, which you managed to do, but not being able to keep effective, pillar of the team from last season, how that will play into the way that Sean Dyche approaches his job now. Because, like all managers, he'll have some thoughts of his own, but actually, why mess around too much with the core of what you had last season?
I suppose when we got to the end of last season with PSR, we probably had to sell one of our big guns to stay the right side of the line, or to if we didn't, to have a pot to strengthen our squad to be in Europe and get more players. So I suppose the question was, do you sell Elanga, Gibbs White, Murillo, and probably since then Elliot Anderson's come ever more into the conversation because he looks such a class player. And I think we felt we had to sell one of them, and they plumped for Elanga because well, for whatever reason, they plumped for Elanga. They went to all sorts of lengths to keep Gibbs White, obviously from Tottenham. and Morgan's still there now, and he's actually not having a very good season, to be honest. He's had one fantastic game, and his form has been pretty ropey since then. So hopefully Dyche puts an arm around him. But I think if whoever we sold Dotun was probably going to leave a big hole in our team. I mean, Tim knows as much about Murillo as me, but he's a fantastic defender, and then Morgan's a top player as well.
Well, you've now seen more of him than I have, because and he was such a brilliant signing, and I don't think he played 25 games, for Corinthians when. So that was a fantastic signing. I think that was a brilliant piece of scouting work, and I'm a huge believer in the centre forward, in Igor Jesus. I think he's a wonderful player. Some of the others I'm not so sure about, but what are the expectations now for this season?
I mean, to me, it's stay in the Premier League is first and foremost, because there's no terrible teams in there. So for me, it's stay in the Premier League and see what we can do in Europe. Europe feels like just a bonus, but obviously our owner, I think his aims will be higher than that. He'll want to push to win the Europa League, and I mean, he'll want to push the top half of the Premier League, which I think statistically very unlikely in general. But I mean, we do have a really good squad. Tim mentions Igor Jesus there. We've got Chris Wood, who scored 20 Premier League goals. We've got Murillo, Elliot Anderson, Douglas Luiz. We've got a lot of good players. Jair Cunha is an interesting one. I don't think you were as high on him, Tim, when we signed him, but no. He looks like he's got something, and he had a good debut. So he's young, so maybe there's something there, but he's a kind of a subsidiary player at the moment. So Sean Dyche has got a really good squad to work with. He's got too many players, if anything. We signed a lot of players, and he's not going to fit them all in. So that's his big challenge, as much of anything, is what do you do with guys like Amari Hutchinson, Arno Calamwendo, James McAtee? They weren't in the squad in the last Premier League game against Chelsea, and I don't know if the owner sees that as sustainable, because they can't afford to take massive financial hits on them, and they're attacking players in kind of a top-heavy squad. So there's lots of good things, and there's lots of challenges for Dyche to really get his teeth into in a very, very short time frame.
I like Nico Williams. I mean, he's got so much energy anyway, and for a left back to get that high up the field, I just think he for me, it kind of epitomizes a lot of what you achieved or overachieved, as you put it, last season. And sometimes you achieve these overachievements with not necessarily the most celebrated of players, but every component of the team is vital, whether they're the top headline makers or otherwise. Sean Dyche, of course, is known for keeping Burnley and Everton in the Premier League. He's the firefighter. I'm sure that was part of why he was the main choice for this. Because
it's an admission of defeat, isn't it? It's an admission of
it's not
Matt's
an
ambition
open
to stay in
admission.
the Premier League.
Yeah, it's not an open admission, of course, because nobody's going to admit that. Look, we're in a relegation battle at this stage of the season. It's
not far off, by the way. If you read the press release when they put it out, they said that Dyche was much more akin to the identity of the club, so which suggests that Ange certainly wasn't. So why did you go that way?
It was just bizarre, wasn't it? Like the only thing they had was the Greek thing. That was it. I mean, it was obvious, and everyone could see that and think, well, it's just not going to work. No,
it was the Greek thing, and he won the Europa League, and Marinakis. The owner's desperate to win the Europa League, but Ange's football is so different. I think it could have potentially worked with a pre-season, but when you watch it, and Tony was on before talking about defending set pieces. I mean, it felt like defending our goal was an unfortunate, something that Ange really wasn't bothered about at all. You see the goals we concede, even against Chelsea.
Not what we do, mate. It's not what we do. We don't bother with that, mate.
Oh man, you watch the goals that we concede. Even against Chelsea when we played well, we let 3 really bad goals in. You can't score 3 goals a game to get something. But I felt sorry for him. It wasn't all his fault. They knew what they were getting in what his style is, but it needs time. And I mean, I wonder where he goes now as a manager.
Exactly. I was amazed that he took it, because obviously it shows massive self-confidence.
That's not, well, he doesn't lack that, does he, when you hear him speak? So.
Indeed, yeah. I can walk into this job, which is totally wrong for me, and make it right. but no, it wasn't to be. What's the mood in the stadium?
I think. I mean, it was. If I go back to Saturday when we played Chelsea in the early kickoff, which are never great atmospheres, but it was interesting against Midtjylland. It was sacked in the morning, which was awful, and it felt like it was game over for him. Against Chelsea, there wasn't that. It was resignation, bordering on almost apathy. And when you're the owner and you see that, I mean, that's a horrible recipe for a football club. So. And Marinakis had left his seat by then, but he made his move.
And of course, the television cameras focused on the empty seats as if there was a story.
And you can see it where we were, yeah.
And there was, to be fair to them, there was a story. But I'm still worried about Sean Dyche, though, because if he is the firefighter and what he knows how to do is to stop the leaking of goals, essentially, to get a draw, sometimes rather than trying to aim for a win. But if he's got this higher ambitions, there's a jeopardy in that, isn't there? That you lose sight of, you do it was a Wigan Athletic, you go and win the Europa Cup or the Conference League, and then you end up being relegated because you've spent too much time in Europe or otherwise. How do you think that the club should play the next 6 months or 8 months, whatever it is? Because I think if it was me, I would say to Sean Dyche, look, your priority is keeping us in this league. Forget about, it's not, if you have a nice passage through the European
But when are they going to get a bite of this again? I mean, it might not come for a while.
You see, well, you tell me. No, Tim's absolutely right. This is the dilemma, isn't it? Not just for owners, but for fans as well. This is too good to miss. What would you do?
I mean, I think, well, as you say, I'm sure they will tell him stay in the Premier League is everything. But they will say, as Tim said, look, we want to win the Europa League, you win the Champions League. And I'm sure that will be something that Marinakis wants, and he'll want to win the Europa League. But yeah, first and foremost, stay in the Premier League. First and foremost, for anything else, stop conceding goals from set pieces and make us hard to beat, and give us a chance and score goals from set pieces as well. The interesting about the way football's gone a little bit while Dyche has been out of the game is his sort of style, not exactly, but a watered down version of his style has become in vogue. You see Manchester City pinging the ball into Haaland all the time. Everyone loves a long throw now. So Dyche's style is sort of almost fashionable. Obviously, he's got to move it more to be more entertaining, I would say, a little bit, to get the wingers that we have on the ball more and things like that. But Forest fans just want to see us win. Like Tim asked about the atmosphere in the ground. I think it'll be great tonight in a few hours because he said all the right things. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people have said the phrase, the season starts today. And I think if we get a win and then we go to Bournemouth, such a tough game, but we've got Bournemouth, Manchester United and Leeds before the international break, and Sturm Graz as well. And if he gets a decent set of results in that, then the season sort of does start again. We are playing catch up, but the momentum can shift quickly. It can also snowball in the wrong way as well. So these next few games are very important for us.
In that kind of low block, rapid transition model, it was so good last season. It just worked so well. Can Elanga be replaced? Or is that model now compromised by his loss?
Yeah, it's compromised to a degree, isn't it? I mean, with the players that we've bought in, literally no one's as quick as Anthony Elanga, but we do have Dan Ndoye, Dylan Bakwa. They're really good ball carriers and they are quite pacey. So I think you have to tweak it. I mean, the way we did it under Nuno was and Steve Cooper before that with Brennan Johnson was a sort of extreme example because the right wings we had were so quick, but you can still transition the ball quickly and play on the counter attack and still be successful. But we just can't rely on Anthony Elanga and that pure pace and quality. But we've got different avenues. Callum Hudson's always a fantastic ball carrier who we need to get more from as well. He'll give us a measure of control. And yeah, I'm interested to see what Dyche does, because he didn't really have those players at Burnley and Everton. His wingers were, Dwight McNeil and Jack Harrison, who aren't that profile of player, and they still played that sort of counter-attacking thing. So there's exciting options there. It's just the time frame is so small to imprint his blueprint on it. But at least the players know the Nuno system. It's much more of a simpler transition than it was under Ange.
Isn't it funny? Our previous guest, Tony Evans, he represented Liverpool for us for this conversation today. He said, "Oh, we've got a tricky match against Brentford," and there you are saying Bournemouth. That's a tricky match.
Tricky, yeah.
He never thought he'd ever say,
No.
we've got a tricky match against Brentford. Did you ever think you'd say, "Oh, we've got a tricky match against Bournemouth"? Did you ever?
Well, to be honest, I mean, Scunthorpe were beating us 4-0 on TV when I was watching us not that long ago. We were we were losing to Yeovil in the playoffs, having been 2-0 up in the second leg. So, as Forest fans, we're used to some humbling experiences. But that's what the Premier League is now, isn't it? Especially this season, every team has got something, and the promoted teams have got nous about them. They're not making the mistakes of Southampton and Leicester and guys like that. So. No, I'm not surprised about that with Bournemouth, really. They're a good team. They got a lot of good players.
You went through the doldrums, from what I remember, largely because of Pierre van Hooijdonk, to be frank. And one player can derail a team financially and otherwise. And once we're going through a similar thing. My team's Charlton. Although we're seeing something of a renaissance at the moment, we've been through the doldrums, though, because we made, in my view, a couple of really, really bad decisions to sell players for very, very little money. And it's like any product that you have. When the product's on a high, you get a new sort of car or whatever it is, everybody wants one. And then it falls out of favour, and then nobody wants one. The value just drops. And when you get kicked out of the Premier League in particular, the value of your players goes down. It doesn't go up. If somebody was going to pay 100 million for your player, they might still pay 100 million. They're not going to pay 120 million for him, and they're more likely to pay, 50 million for the same player. And it was a poor episode with Pierre van Hooijdonk, I thought, and I felt sorry for Nottingham Forest after that point. But things turn around, don't they? Things fall apart and then they come back together again. How long will it take for Nottingham Forest to get back to that glory season?
Get back to one season in the last 30 or 40. Matt, I imagine, Matt, that you're too young for the glory days.
I mean, I was born in 1982, so I wasn't really my proper Forest fandom really started. Dave Bassett, I suppose, when Pierre van Hooijdonk had just gone. That's when I really started regularly watching. I mean, I was a fan when Frank Clark and really, really latter days of Brian Clough, but it's mostly been dark days I've seen. And it's interesting what you say about how long it takes to build things up, and sort of we've had 4 years of very much an upward trajectory, and the last 2 months have reminded me how quickly it can fall apart, I suppose, if you make a couple of very bad key decisions that can go against you. So hopefully Dyche is a good decision. I feel like he's a sensible decision, and at least till the summer, maybe we have a different conversation.
He's pragmatic, isn't he? He's the pragmatic decision of the ones that you mentioned earlier on. He's the pragmatic one, and good luck to him. Mate, it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Did you enjoy last season? Did you, in retrospect now, did you enjoy last season as much as you should have done?
Oh, well, that's a good question. And no is the answer. And I've thought about this, Tim, because I was thinking how, when we first got promoted, we often discussed how the value of a win, it felt like an event, what it did for you mentally and everything.
No, we can't hear you. Can't hear you.
You've just muted yourself.
Oh, no, I've got a loose mic connection. Professional podcaster, that's not very good. I think we got a little bit blasé of feeling like, oh, we're winning all these games, and they didn't feel valuable. And I fell into that trap. So I'm going to consciously, if we do start winning again, I won't feel that way. Not like taking it for granted, but it didn't feel like this is incredible, beating West Ham 1-0 at the City Ground when we first got promoted, beating them 3-0 the third season. It's like, oh yeah, we played really well. Who's next? And that's probably the thing, is to appreciate them at the moment and not look to the next game as much, I would say.
All right.
Yeah, Matt, great speaking to you, and thank you very much. How can people get hold of the podcast, the Forest Focus podcast?
Yeah, thank you. Forest Focus podcast, we're out every day. We've got a post-match show after the Porto game, so we're on YouTube and we do it live like this and on all your audio platforms, especially Apple and Spotify.
Well, let's do this again. And if you ever want to invite, the likes of Tim on, let me know. I'm his agent. I'll get my 20%.
20% of Jack is still.
Exactly. It's still 20% though, whatever you say. You never
Tim has come on once before. He wouldn't remember. It was years ago when I worked for a different company, and he talked about Gustavo Scarpa on a podcast I hosted previously. So it'd be great to have him on again. Yeah.
Yes. Feel free to do it.
Anytime. And thank you for watching or listening to the Global Soccer Interactive. We'll do it again next Wednesday with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. So it says it there, with Felix White. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. What great advice, wouldn't you say, Tim?
Works for me.
Thank you.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name podcast is an 1129 production.